And so that's super, super helpful. And I know that, for me, I notice it's the people often closest to my life I get triggered by the most. So my partner, my son, my parents I don't live with anymore, but if I go to a family gathering, and actually a lot of my family is here today. It's really hard. It's really hard because I notice myself wanting to be right. I notice myself not being seen or heard. I notice myself like staying really quiet and doing a lot of these things. And I think that, I don't know why I bring that up. It's just, I want to relate to the fact that it's really hard. It's really hard often for me to know how to work with that in those moments.
Mm-hmm. Well.
And my past, if I'll just go to my past often, you talk about, is it like toxic niceness? Is that the word you've used before?
Toxic
niceness or toxic kindness or toxic?
Yeah, I'm not sure I use toxic.
Okay.
But okay, there's a kind of niceness, self-suppression that it is harmful, it's pathological, it actually creates physical illness, if that's what you're doing.
Right. And so that's often my tendency in times where I notice that I'm not feeling safe or I'm not feeling comfortable, is I'll go to that. And often, Gabor, I'll have this experience where I'll think I've actually worked through my trauma, or a lot of it, and I'll get continually humbled. Yeah. And I'm curious, I know that I've been to some people that have been to many of your workshops, and they'll say one of the beautiful things about Gabor is when he makes a mistake or says something stupid, somebody calls him on it, and you admit it, and you kind of move on. And I'm curious if you could say a little bit more about...
That's very rare, but, Sorry.
Well, sometimes your own wife stands up and calls you on it. Sometimes a participant calls you on it. Sometimes, and I'm curious because I think, maybe it's more of a man thing, but whenever somebody gives feedback that I don't like or that I don't want, I notice myself instantly defensive. And I'm always looking for guides of people who can receive feedback and actually take that in and make that into some kind of inquiry.
Well, here there's
and I'm wondering if you can help me.
Well, here for me, where there's a kind of there's a split between what I do in public and what happens privately.
Yeah.
Because just like you mentioned yourself, the person that can trigger you the most and trigger me the most aggressive and hostile responses is my spouse. That's where I can talk about what that's about, but in public, when it comes to my ideas or my work, I'm not particularly defensive. I'm very confident in what I'm saying, and I'm very confident in... my ego is not threatened if I make a mistake. So if somebody points it out, if they can convince me I made a mistake, I say, yeah, I made a mistake, no big deal. I'm not threatened by that.
Okay.
But if I'm challenged more personally, in an intimate relationship, I'm much more likely to get triggered and to respond in a difficult way.
Sure. Yeah. And I was wondering if you could say a little bit about, you write very eloquently about your relationship with your 3 children.
Yeah.
And how, as a father in the early years, you really weren't connected to them and really weren't present for them. And you've worked hard to heal those relationships. And I know this is also what you're going to be writing about. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about healing relationships with adult connections that really, really matter to us.
Yeah.
Because I'm guessing that all of us here have other adults that we feel distant from who are intimate to us, and it requires a certain kind of healing.
Yeah. Well, my most recent book, The Myth of Normal, that was mentioned in the introduction, I wrote that with my son, Daniel. And in fact, I could not have written it without him.
And was that your idea or his idea, or how did that emerge?
It evolved that way. I showed him the book proposal, and his critique was so acute, and his emendation so adept that we just knew that we had to do this together. But this is a boy who was he's a genius. He's 47 years old now. He's a musical theater writer. He's a mental chiropractor, which is a whole other story. He's a wonderful lyricist, award-winning lyricist, wonderful musician, and a highly sensitive person. And when he was small, we didn't get him. We didn't understand him. and their own marriage was in turmoil at times, and children absorb the stresses of their parents.
Yeah.
And so we've had a lot of remedial parenting to do as our kids got older, as we got more conscious about our own trauma, and as we became more aware of what our children needed from us as adults. It's been a lot of work. So Daniel and I are now writing another book together that was also mentioned. It's a workshop that we do together. It's called Hello Again, a fresh start for parents and their adult children. And it's a workshop that we've been giving for 6 years. And if you watch on YouTube, you can go on YouTube and Google Daniel and Gabor Maté, and the first talk that we give in 2016 is seen by about 400,000 people. You can still see us seething at each other on stage. This is in the context of a healing workshop, you understand? Well, that's okay, because we're very open about it. We don't hide it, and we work it out, you know. But it's been ongoing.
Wow.
It's been ongoing work, and it's been a theme with all our 3 adult children.
Yeah. And so how would you, I don't know, advice isn't the right word, but if there's people out here who are listening to this who are feeling like, I don't feel that close to the people that I've raised or my parents or somebody who's really intimate to me, where is the beginning point?
The beginning is here. You know, like, once you're an adult child, your parents did all kinds of things that hurt you. In this culture, and it's not to put the blame on individual parents, as we point out in the myth of normal, in this society, it's awfully difficult to be a parent.
Yeah.
This society does not support parenting the way nature designed parenting to be.
Yeah.
And it's a whole other subject. But inevitably, we pass our stuff on to our kids for all kinds of reasons, with the best of good intentions, the best of goodwill. So then you're an adult person, and you've got your parents. These are the people. And here's the thing about that relationship. It's completely unique. Because what other relationship begins with one of the partners being a one-celled organism and the other being a full adult? It's an incredible power difference. And then all of a sudden you're supposed, and so 20 years later, now you're supposed to have an equal relationship?
Yeah.
I mean, how is it even possible, you know? So there you are, the adult child, and there's all this history, which begins in the womb already. I mean, already your parents' emotional states start affecting you and your brain development in the womb. That's just the science. And so as an adult kid, where do you begin? Well, you have to take responsibility for what's inside you.
Yeah.
Not blame, but responsibility.
Yeah.
Not that I'm at fault for it. In fact, you're not at fault for it at all. But who's going to be responsible in the present moment to deal with that? Only you can do that. And the same with the adults. Same with the parents.
Yeah.
And so that what we teach here is that it's not 50-50, it's 100%, 100%.
Yeah.
And I was talking to somebody today whose mother died before they had reconciled. But this person was still able to come to equanimity with her mother, who had really hurt her sometime after the mother's death. Because this person took on the internal task of healing themselves. So, you know, if both partners are around and they're both willing to work on it, it can be a very beautiful dance.
Yeah.
But it does begin in both cases by willing to take responsibility for what we carry inside.
Yeah.
Not for how it got there,
Right.
but for what we're carrying.
Right. And sometimes people have this notion that's like, well, I'm this way because my parents did this to me when I was a kid. My parents didn't love me then as kids, so I'm this way as an adult, and sorry, you just have to deal with that, right? Like
But that's true. But it's true.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. But then they keep doing the same harm behavior, and,
Yeah.
and when you bring it up to them, like, well, this is just who I am because my mom did this or dad did this.
I know. Well, then they're not taking responsibility.
They're not taking responsibility. Yeah.
they're trapping themselves in the victim mentality.
Yeah.
That I'm the helpless victim of what happened long ago, and there's nothing I can do about it. It's all somebody else's fault.
Right.
There's an Eastern European joke about that, which goes, "My hand froze off. It serves my father right. He should have bought me gloves."
Uh-huh.
Well, at some point you have to buy gloves for yourself.
Right.
And so, while it's true that we're shaped by what happened to us in childhood, beginning even in previous generations and in the womb, that's all true. But recognizing that ought to be a source of empowerment rather than a source of passivity.
Yeah.
Because once I get it, like, okay, so this is why. Now I can understand it. Now I can do something about it.
Yeah.
Not that I'm helplessly trapped in this vortex of suffering that somebody else inflicted on me.
Yeah.
And there's some people who do that, and that's really doesn't help them.
Right. I was talking to my son the other day. He's in New York. We both have kids in New York, and he's 21, and he's been sick this last month. He was going to be here, but he can't be here. And he said, he's like, it's really hard for me to rest, Dad. We were talking the other day. And I was like, he's like, I know I need to rest. It's really hard for me to rest, and I feel like I need to always be doing something.
You need always
be doing something.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think I got that from you.
Yeah.
And I was not quite sure how to respond to that, because he would play video games for hours on end sometimes, and I'd be like, what are you doing with your life, right? Like, I actually had a judgment about his video game playing that I thought there's just a world to live in, right? And so I found myself not quite sure how to respond, because I was glad he was telling me, I was glad he was noticing it, but I also kind of feel like he's 21, he can make his own life, he can make his own choices, right? And but I also have to admit to myself that I'm driven in a lot of different ways, and so the feeling he got around me probably was drive.
I would say so.
Am I missing something?
No, you're on the right track, but I think there's something more to it.
Okay.
In my view, see how this feels for you. You may always have been somebody that always doing something and kind of driven and so on. But I would say that the big source of your son's issue is not that it's learned behavior that he got from copying you. It's something deeper than that and more difficult than that.
Yeah.
And even more painful than that. Because he was only learning, you can easily unlearn it. But actually, when do we, and this is true for me, probably true for you, probably true for a lot of people in this room, certainly in this society, when is it that we keep this sense that we always have to be doing something when we don't think that we are enough, when we don't do something?
Yeah.
When just our existence for being is not celebrated, validated, when we don't feel that we are enough, then we have to justify our being by doing all the time. So that's one source of it. The other source of it is just a discomfort with the self, that I always have to be doing something in order not to be still with myself.
Yeah.
So those are, I think, deeper sources than simply the modeling that you may have provided him with.
Thank you. Yeah, very true, very true.